Cold air settles differently in the hollers when a story carries the weight of Appalachia's darkest secret. Folks say the hills remember things people try to bury: voices, footsteps, prayers that were never answered. And somewhere along an old gravel road, past fences leaning like tired bones, stands the Appalachian house the church once declared too evil to bless. Its porch boards still creak when no one's standing there. Lantern light never seems to stay lit inside. And neighbors, even now, avoid glancing toward its windows after dusk, as if something inside looks back. Imagine stepping onto that property, wind nudging the weeds, the smell of damp earth rising, the silence holding its breath. Nothing screams, nothing moves. But something in your stomach tightens, the way it does when you know you're not alone. For generations, people whispered this hidden Appalachian story only behind closed doors. A family broken by secrets, a pastor who refused to pray, and a house that grew darker each winter, as if feeding on the quiet suffering inside its walls. Some say the evil started with them. Others believe it was already waiting. Before we walk any deeper into this forgotten path, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who appreciates the strange corners of history. And tell me, where are you watching from? Settle in, because trust me, the next part is hard to forget. Once we step through that doorway, there's no turning back. The road narrows as it snakes into the Appalachian holler, trees leaning over like they're trying to whisper warnings. The cold settles low here, seeping through boots, coat, and even your thoughts. You can hear the creek murmuring somewhere downhill, the rhythm broken only by distant, lonely crows. And there, through the mist, you see it. A house that shouldn't still be standing, yet clings stubbornly to the hillside like a secret that refuses to leave. Its paint has peeled away in long vertical streaks, revealing the bare, gray wood underneath. Windows are uneven, some cracked, others darkened with grime. The front porch sags at a slight angle, each board groaning as if it remembers the weight of lives long buried inside. Neighbors say the wind carries something different here, like it moves through the house instead of around it, stirring shadows that shouldn't exist. Even before anyone lived there, the land felt off. Folks in the holler whisper that this part of the valley has always been stubborn, resistant to light, resistant to change. When the first family moved in generations ago, the trees themselves seemed to lean away, their branches brushing the roof in reluctant protest. By the time the second generation arrived, the house had already earned a name, the one the hills tried to warn about. Walk up the gravel driveway, and the air thickens, cold and damp, smelling faintly of earth and rot. Every footstep crunches against stones like a drumbeat, counting down to some invisible reckoning. A lantern left on the porch flickers weakly, though no one's been near for years. Inside, shadows cling to corners as if afraid to be seen. The smell of old wood and smoke lingers, ghosting the hallway like a memory no one wanted to keep. You can imagine the first visitors. Neighbors peering over fences, clutching coats tighter, telling each other they just passed a strange energy, a heaviness that made their chest ache. Some swear they saw the family through the windows, silent, staring back with eyes that seemed older than the decades that had passed. No laughter, no movement. Just the house breathing slowly, like it had learned patience over generations of isolation. And yet, for all its warnings, the house stands. Weathered, stubborn, unwelcoming, but alive in a way the hills themselves acknowledge. It waits. Something about it knows the valley's secrets, the hidden Appalachian story buried under moss, mud, and memory. And as night falls over the holler, the trees shiver, the wind whispers, and the porch boards groan once more, as if inviting you to come closer. The family arrived quietly, the kind of quiet that settles into a valley like fog after a rain. Folks in the holler remember seeing them unpacking in silence, hands moving but voices absent. Children who should have been laughing and chasing sticks down the creek instead lingered near the house, pale and still, their eyes scanning the tree line as if expecting something to emerge. The parents stooped, guarded, heavy with a secret no one could name, moved like shadows themselves, always within the walls, never beyond the fence. Neighbors tried to offer help at first. A basket of fresh eggs, a jar of preserves, a kind greeting over the fence. But the family never came to the gate, never waved, never spoke. And when the children looked up, their faces were expressionless, as if they were carrying a weight too large for their small shoulders. Inside, the house was colder than it had any right to be. The rooms absorbed light and warmth, leaving behind a chill that never left, even in summer. Floors creaked under invisible steps. Walls seemed to lean closer, listening. Neighbors would later swear that on certain nights, the house hummed soft, low vibrations that sounded almost like voices murmuring secrets they weren't meant to hear. Schoolchildren passing by said they sometimes caught glimpses of the family through grimy windows. The youngest girl, with hair like wet straw, staring without blinking. A boy, clutching a worn blanket, tracing patterns on the floor with his finger as if mapping something only he understood. No one ever saw them outside. No one heard laughter. Even the wind seemed hesitant to stir the air around the property, as if afraid it would disturb the wrong thing. By the second winter, the story had spread quietly, a ripple through the holler. This is the family no one checked on. People began to leave food at the edge of the driveway, silently, like offerings. Some stayed on the porch just long enough to see shadows move, to hear the faintest whimper echo through the walls. And while curiosity tempted some to knock, none could summon the courage to open the door. The house was alive in a way that demanded distance, a living testament to the hidden Appalachian story buried in plain sight. In Appalachia, the church is more than a building. It is the backbone of a community, a compass for morality, a place where voices rise in unison against the dark. But when the pastor of the local congregation first approached the house, even he hesitated. The wind had sharpened into a bite that day, rattling the tin roof like skeletal fingers. He had come to bless the home, a tradition in the valley, meant to protect families from harm, but as he stepped onto the porch, a shiver ran down his spine that he could not shake. The boards groaned under his weight, but there was something else, something underfoot that belonged to the house itself, a subtle resistance that pushed back against him. His lantern flickered, casting wild shadows on peeling wallpaper. When he reached the main door, he paused. The air smelled faintly of damp soil and something older, more metallic. Inside, he swore he heard whispers, not the voices of children, not the parents, but a collective murmur that didn't belong to any living thing. By the time he returned to the congregation, the pastor's face was pale, his hands still shaking. He told them simply, "I cannot bless this house. Something here, something beyond our understanding, I cannot touch it." News of his refusal spread quickly, like smoke carried down the holler by a sharp wind. Families who had been curious now kept their distance. Even those who had previously left food at the edge of the driveway stopped. Mothers clutched their children a little tighter when passing by. Fathers slowed their horses, eyes cast warily at the windows. The house had become a living warning, a space that even faith dared not enter. Locals still remember the first winter after the pastor's visit. Snow fell heavier than usual, settling over the roof like a shroud. Inside, the family moved as shadows within shadows, the children seeming smaller, the parents tighter, more withdrawn. Some neighbors claimed they saw figures at the windows that did not belong to the family. Others said lanterns glowed briefly at night, though no one had lit them. The refusal of the church marked a turning point, a tacit acknowledgement that the house and whatever lingered within it was beyond human measure. It wasn't a place of simple misfortune or neglect. The hills themselves seemed to bow away from the property, the air thick with the weight of unspoken stories. And while the congregation prayed elsewhere, the house held its secret, silent and patient, waiting for anyone brave or foolish enough to step closer. Winter nights in the holler are long and merciless, but inside that house, darkness had its own rhythm. Lanterns flickered, candles guttered, and lamps refused to burn steady. Neighbors swore they could see faint lights from the windows, only to vanish moments later, leaving the house wrapped in a deeper black than the night itself. The wind whispered through the cracks, carrying sounds that made the heart tighten, soft creaks, the shuffle of feet on bare floors, and sometimes the low murmur of voices that did not belong to anyone outside. The children of the family moved silently, almost gliding from room to room. Their faces, pale under the lantern glow, betrayed no emotion, though the adults, stooped and silent, seemed to shrink further into themselves with each passing night. Even the dogs from nearby farms avoided the yard, ears flat, hackles raised. as if they understood a danger humans could not name. The first time a neighbor peered through the frost-covered window, they saw the youngest girl standing motionless in the kitchen, staring at the ceiling. Behind her, shadows moved in ways that didn't belong to furniture. And then, just as suddenly, the lights died. The neighbor ran home, heart hammering, unable to shake the feeling that something in the house had noticed them. Some nights, the wind would carry the faintest sounds of a piano, a single note repeated, irregular, echoing through the holler. No one had a piano. No one had entered the house. Yet the melody lingered, haunting the empty hills, twisting curiosity into unease. By the third winter, whispers began circulating among the older children of the valley. They spoke of glimpses of figures at the windows, pale and thin, looking out as though expecting someone to follow. The adults dismissed it, of course, rationalizing with frost, imagination, and tired nerves. But the house kept its vigil, quiet and patient, as if it had been waiting for something to arrive or depart for decades. Even the family inside seemed to recognize the weight pressing down on the walls. Conversations became rare, words clipped. Meals were eaten in silence. The nights stretched longer, each hour thick with tension, as the house claimed its own rhythm of fear. The holler knew better than to interfere. A boundary had been drawn, invisible but absolute. And as the wind carried cold across the valley, the house seemed to breathe in time with it, alive in a way that refused to let the darkness go. By the fifth winter, the house no longer felt empty, it felt expectant. Neighbors reported seeing lights flash erratically through grimy windows, like lanterns thrown to the floor and left spinning. Dogs howled deep into the night, far louder than their usual warnings. Something had shifted inside. The family, once quiet and withdrawn, began moving differently, jerky, abrupt, as if reacting to unseen commands. The holler held its breath, knowing the silence it once clung to was breaking. The youngest child was the first to make noise. Not laughter, not a cry, but a sharp, piercing wail that cut across the snow-laden hills. It was a sound that did not belong to any human alone, layered instead with something older, something the neighbors could not place. Mothers ran to windows, fathers gripped railings, but no one dared approach. They had seen the shadows behind the glass, flickering unnaturally, as if the house itself had become the parent, and the family, the obedient shadows. The adults tried to flee, yet the doors seemed heavier than what should allow. Windows refused to open fully, the wind outside whispering warnings no one could heed. Inside, the house held them close, the walls bending like steel to keep them contained. And when the first neighbor finally stepped too close, peering through the frosted glass, they saw the mother at the top of the stairs, motionless, her eyes wide and empty, her hands pressed to the railing like she was trying to climb out of her own skin. Then came the sounds that would not be forgotten: doors slamming without wind, footsteps pacing rooms that had no inhabitants, the low hum of voices speaking words no one recognized. The children screamed not together, not in unison, but in overlapping layers, each scream sharp and jagged, tearing through the frozen air. The father, if he was still present, was never seen moving toward them. Only the house shifted around the cries, absorbing them, shaping them into something darker. By dawn, the snow had muted the world outside. The valley smelled of smoke and iron, a subtle reminder that something terrible had passed overnight. When neighbors finally dared approach, they found the house intact but empty. The family was gone, or perhaps the house had claimed them entirely. Only their echoes remained, faint scratches along the walls, worn footprints in the dust, the lingering chill that no fire could chase away. The holler never forgot that night. No one spoke of it openly, yet everyone knew. The house had taken its final cry for help and converted it into a story that would haunt the valley for decades. It was a warning, a reminder, and a secret hidden behind the peeling paint and crooked windows, a secret the hills themselves refused to release. Years have passed, and the house still stands, though time has done its work. Roof shingles curl like tired fingers, the porch sags lower into the cold earth, and the windows are nothing more than dark, empty eyes staring across the holler. The snow melts and returns each year, but the house refuses to age gracefully. The hills seem to bow slightly away from it, keeping a cautious distance. Locals no longer walk past casually. Even the boldest kids avoid the gravel road that curves toward its gate. Inside, The silence is thick and complete. Nothing moves, yet everything feels watched. Dust clings to furniture that once bore the weight of despair. The air smells of damp wood, of memories that refuse to die. And though the family has vanished, their presence lingers, an imprint of unease etched into the floors and walls. Visitors, if there are any, swear they hear whispers, footsteps pacing rooms that have been empty for decades. The hills remember. The wind remembers. And the house remembers best of all. Legends spread quietly in the valley, of a family taken by the shadows they lived alongside, of nights when the lights flickered even without lanterns, of the pastor who refused to bless a home now known only in hushed tones. Some say the house feeds on curiosity, drawing those who dare approach too close. Others insist it waits for the right moment to reveal the truth of its past, when the wind is sharpest, when snow presses heavily, when the valley itself holds its breath. People still ask, what happened to the family? Why did the house claim them, or was it always waiting, patient and hungry, for the next secret to cross its threshold? Those who grew up in the holler rarely answer directly, shaking their heads or crossing themselves. Even modern maps mark the location, but few go near. And yet, some nights, when the moon hangs thin and the wind carries through the trees just right, faint lights can be seen flickering behind the grimy windows, as if the house is remembering the cries, the shadows, the silent pleas that once filled its walls. The house endures. Its story is stitched into the holler, woven into every cold wind, every creaking floorboard, every lonely road curving toward the forgotten. And while the valley moves on, some secrets never leave. They linger, patient, waiting for the next soul who will dare to come close, who will see, and who will remember.